Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a strategy that you can use to reduce stress when applying to college while also increasing the competitiveness of your application. If you don't know me, I'm Keith. I'm a high school student studying in the USA. I'm passionate about how we can live intentional, fulfilling, and productive lives. And a lot of high school students have the misconception that you need to take the hardest courses, the most APs, all the clubs that you can join to increase the competitiveness of your application. But today I'm going to show you why that is not true. And instead, I'm going to be showing you a strategy that actually makes you look a lot better in the eyes of the admissions officer. This video is geared towards all high schoolers who haven't applied to college yet, but specifically for 9th and 10th graders who are beginning to think seriously about college and what they should be doing. It's for people who want some guidance on how to reduce stress so that they're not pulling all-nighters or struggling to get up in the morning. So with that said, let's get on to the strategy. This strategy that I'm going to talk about is taken from Cal Newport's book, How to Become a High School Superstar. And it's one of 3 parts that he says is critical to making you look interesting in the eyes of admissions officers. This video would be part 1 of a 3-part series if I do decide to make future videos. The first part of Cal Newport's book is called The Law of Underscheduling. And the law of underscheduling is arguably the most important part of this strategy. This video is split up into 2 parts. For the first part, I'm going to be explaining the why behind this strategy so that you do realize that it is possible to reduce stress and increase competitiveness. And then the second part, I'll be talking about the how. So how do you implement this into your routine, or how do you get started with trying to implement this law of underscheduling? So before we can move any further, we need to know what is the law of underscheduling. It basically says that you should have a lot of free time in your schedule and you should use this free time to explore. Now I'll get into the details about what it means to have a lot of free time in your schedule and what it means to explore later on, but for now this is the basic idea behind this. Instead of spending your time on a really difficult course load or a ton of club meetings or club activities, you want to be spending your free time in a much more relaxing but rewarding way. And if you don't believe that this is possible without having to exert yourself when doing club activities or hard courses, there are 2 points that Cal Newport brings up that hopefully can convince you otherwise. So number 1, the interestingness hypothesis. When admissions officers say they're looking for students who show passion, what they really mean is that they're looking for the type of student who can sit down and chat about a topic for 30 minutes and hold an educated audience's rapt attention. And then part 2, interestingness cannot be forced or planned in advance. It is generated instead as a natural byproduct of a deep interest, which is a long-term pursuit that a student returns to voluntarily and eagerly whenever given a chance. Using these 2 arguments, it becomes obvious that if you want to become interesting in the eyes of admissions officers, you need to have a deep interest that you obviously cannot have if your schedule is always jam-packed with club meetings or coursework. So oftentimes students create fake interests, or what Cal Newport likes to call prefabs, which are basically ideas that are generated when you, your parent, or a counselor sit down and try to come up with an extracurricular strategy. So for example, a prefab could be starting a club based around your hobby or doing a summer program at a university. Although they may sound interesting to you when you're sitting down and talking to your parents about how to increase your perceived value, the admissions officers have seen this a ton of times and it's going to bore them. It's not something that could potentially increase your interestingness. It may just seem like you're doing more busy work for less output. So I hope I've made it clear that the underscheduled student lets interestingness guide their direction of their work, and as a result they're able to create a deep interest and increase their perceived value in front of admissions officers more naturally, whereas a student who's trying to forcefully increase their perceived value might create something like prefabs, which end up actually hurting the student more than it is helping them. So hopefully, now that I've convinced you that the underscheduled student actually has an advantage over the student who tries to engineer their way into extracurricular activities, I'll go over the how of this so that you get a better understanding of why this is so effective and how you can implement it in your own life. How do you go about implementing the law of underscheduling into your life? So first off, we want to be reaching for the ideal student work week. The ideal student work week is that you should be done with all your work on the weekdays before dinner, and on the weekends it should only take up half a day on either Saturday or Sunday. Keep in mind that this may be impossible for some of us, and if we can't achieve the ideal student work week because of how our school is set up, then that's okay. We just want to reach for this goal and try as best as we can. In order to get closer to this goal, we can reduce homework time, and there are a lot of tips out there on how to do that, so I won't get into that here. But the other thing that is very important is learning how to quit commitments that can be more of a time sink rather than a helping hand when applying to colleges. So with that said, I'm going to go over a few strategies on how to get rid of activities that won't do you any good. So the first strategy is called the Activity Andy test. Imagine a student who has mediocre grades, not too low, not too high. He's not particularly ambitious, but he's not lazy at the same time. And imagine this guy called Activity Andy. Go over the list of activities that you're doing right now in high school and mark out all the activities that you imagine Activity Andy could do. For example, being the board member of a club or being a member of the sports team. Drop anything that Activity Andy could do, because if a mediocre student could do it, why would the admissions officer care if you could too? Now, of course, if you joined an activity because you wanted to hang out with friends and it's not too much of a time grab, by all means you can stick to it and have some fun. What I'm saying is that you want to cut down the amount of superfluous activities that you're doing so that you can make time for the ones that really matter. Keep in mind that any activity or club that you may have joined to increase your interestingness in front of admissions officers is most likely not going to work. The next strategy is called the final straw effect. Now that we've gone over how to cut down activities that won't do you any good, we're going to go over how to cut courses that won't do you any good. You want to divide your courses into 3 categories: the showboat courses, the required courses, and the elective courses. Showboat courses are usually things that you take to increase the academic rigor so that you show colleges that you can take very difficult classes. Required courses are obviously those that you need to take, and elective courses are things that you take for fun. If your course load is too much, remove the most demanding showboat course. By removing the most demanding course that you have, it ensures that you make time for all the other classes and make sure that you can get good grades in those, and also frees up your time on the weekdays and weekends to be exploring and following the underscheduled lifestyle. An exception is that you should always let genuine interest trump this rule, but just keep in mind that any showboat course that you might have taken to increase your perceived value should be cut out if you can't make time for it. So now that you've cut down the amount of activities and courses that you have to take, you have a lot more free time in your schedule, and you need to make sure that this free time does not go towards playing video games and just messing around, but is actually used to explore and cultivate a deep interest. In terms of exploring, I have 4 strategies that you can use to use your free time as best as possible. Number 1 is to read. Reading books helps you find your deep interest, because when you're reading, you're narrowing down your area of focus. So for example, if I read a science book and I really like that, try to find a more niche science book, and that could lead me down a path that helps me unlock my deep interest. The second strategy is to start a Saturday morning project. This is a project that you work only on Saturdays between the time you wake up and lunch. The type of projects that you want to be doing during this time are things that would make somebody who heard it for the first time say wow. For example, writing a screenplay, trying to get a short story published, or writing a science paper to be published. A Saturday morning project is so that you can try and hone down what you really like to do and try to find a deep interest that you can use later on down the road. So by doing it only once a week, we can make sure that if we do look forward to doing that thing on Saturday, we know that it's something worth investing our time into. And obviously, if you find this Saturday morning project to be very fun and you look forward to it, you can expand it so that it takes up more of your free time on the weekdays or even on Sunday. The third strategy is to join communities that you are interested in. Use your free time to take on small projects or opportunities that these communities might give you. So for example, if I'm very interested in the environment, I might join a nonprofit environment organization, and at first they might give me tasks like help clear the trash on the beach, and as you complete these more menial tasks and the organizations give you more responsibility, hopefully you'll be given more impressive or larger projects that you can use later on to create a deep interest out of. The fourth and final strategy is the advice guide method. There are 3 steps to this. The first step is to find people in your particular area of interest that have succeeded and find people who have failed. Number 2 is to compare the people who have succeeded with the people who have failed. Now, if you can't find people who have failed because obviously they're not as popular, it's okay to just try and identify what these successful people did that was different from everyone else. Step number 3 is to actually contact these successful people and ask specific questions about what they did to succeed. And preferably you can contact them through email or even call them. So that was a lot of information just now. And it might be a little bit overwhelming to try to explain how to change your life in a 10-minute YouTube video, but I'll try and break down the information presented here into 3 actionable steps so that you can hopefully return back here if you need more advice on any particular aspect. So number 1 is to form the ideal student work week by reducing homework time, quitting activities that Activity Andy could do, and reducing your course load. With the free time that you have, read more, start a Saturday morning project, and join interesting communities. Once you've identified an interest that could become a deep interest, use the advice guide method to start a project by asking people who are already successful in the field how they did it. So I hope you've learned something new from this video that you can use to help decrease your stress and increase the competitiveness of your college application. Remember that you don't have to stress yourself out over a difficult course load or tons of clubs just because other people are doing it. So if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing or liking. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.